The focus of like the whole family.
She's lost her life at the hands of somebody who she's supposed to trust.
We are proceeding with a first-degree murder charge.
When the alert went out last night saying Ria Rajkumar was located, many people assumed the story had a happy ending. When they woke up this morning, they heard the news the 11-year-old had been killed.
Yeah.
It was her mother's appeal to police for help that set off a frantic search for Ria, one that ended with the tragic discovery of the girl's body in a Brampton home. That's where we find our Farah Morelli tonight. And Farah, this little girl's death is really affecting that community.
Dwight, this community is shaken given the events that have transpired over the past 24 hours. First, with the news of her death, and then late today, the news of her father being charged with first-degree murder. Throughout the day, people have been coming to where I'm standing here to bring flowers, teddy bears, pay their respects, consoling each other, trying to understand just what happened to this little girl and why. Yesterday was Ria Rajkumar's 11th birthday. It was supposed to be a day of happiness and celebration. Instead, her day ended in horror, here at her father's home late last night.
Tragically, just around 12 a.m., officers located Ria Rajkumar deceased at a residence in Brampton.
It all began yesterday at 3 p.m. when Ria's mother dropped her off at a gas station in Mississauga to meet her father. 3.5 hours later, she contacted police to say she hadn't returned when she was supposed to and received concerning messages from her father. At 11 p.m., police issued an Amber Alert for the missing girl and her father's car. Not long after, Rupesh Rajkumar was arrested by OPP on Highway 11 near Orillia. And around midnight, the Amber Alert was cancelled when police found Ria Rajkumar's body. 41-year-old Rupesh Rajkumar is now in police custody.
We are proceeding with a first-degree murder charge.
He was always a cousin to look up to. Like we just never expected this to happen.
Today, members of Rajkumar's family said they didn't know of any mental health issues and struggled to understand what had happened.
I know he was a very good guy. He was hardworking.
Ria was, she was like the princess of the family, and I loved her.
The students are remembering her for her laugh. She was extremely vibrant, sparkling personality, very well liked.
At Meadowvale Village, Ria's school, a single flag hung at half-mast. Grief counselors were brought in to try to console her peers.
It is a very, very sad day inside of Meadowvale Village today.
Outside her father's home, a steady stream of friends, family, and even strangers brought balloons and other tokens.
I have children of my own, and I could never imagine losing my life to, somebody that she was supposed to trust, somebody that was supposed to protect her.
And Farah, what do we know about Ria's father, the accused in this case?
Dwight, police have released few details about the accused in this case. We do know from Brampton court records that he did have some run-ins with police in this city. We do know as well that when he was arrested today, he was actually taken to hospital and later a trauma center for a medical condition. He's going to have to get a medical clearance before he actually proceeds and is processed in this case. But as I mentioned, his arrest, this young girl's death, has had such a profound effect on this community. Coming up a little bit later, I will have more reaction to what has happened here from people at Ria's school. Dwight.
Thank you, Farah. Now, Ria's mother reported her missing at around 6:30. Now, the alert went out hours later at around 11:30, and many are asking today, why did it take so long? Our Ali Shihsan is live in Brampton now. And Ali, lots of questions tonight about that gap in time.
That's right. So Ria's mother came to this Peel Police detachment around 6:30 last night, as you said. Peel Police began their investigation locally to find her ex and the daughter here. That search included pinging cell phones, looking for records, and also visiting places that the two were known to hang out when they were together. 4 hours go by, then the Amber Alert is issued.
Obviously, when we realize, we're not getting it, we're extremely concerned for their well-being. We fill out the form with OPP for the Amber Alert, and then the process goes from there.
There's 3 criteria for that. The first criteria is the child has to be under the age of 18. The second criteria is they have to be believed to be in danger. And the third criteria is there has to be informative description, on one of three things: the child, the suspect, or the vehicle. Once those thresholds are reached, then the OPP manages the Amber Alert system for the province of Ontario.
The search for Rhea checked all three boxes. The alert went out 4 hours after the investigation began.
We have a system called Alert Ready.
Sunil Johal is an expert in these systems and their effectiveness.
It enables them to push out alerts around certain kinds of incidents to people, whether it's through radio, television, and in the past year through wireless devices, so through your cell phone.
But in Rajakumar's case, some people never received one. Others are still getting them this morning.
Whether that's a glitch at the carrier level or what, I mean, I don't think we're really clear on that, and that's where we need to study and make sure that there aren't holdups in the system that are holding things up from going out instantaneously. But I mean, again, 80% of Canadians own mobile devices. This is, in today's day and age, the best way of reaching people. We just want to make sure it's targeted, it's effective, and it's really hitting at those important issues that people need to know about.
Would the outcome have been different if it was escalated sooner, or if the mobile phone alerts rolled out smoother?
I honestly don't know. The sad reality is it went out when it did, and officers were close and nearby. I think a lot of them were really affected by the fact that they were actively searching for this girl, and this is the outcome that we're now dealing with.
The investigation continues, obviously, and one thing the police can say is that the Amber Alert worked. The vehicle was spotted by someone who recognized the description from the Amber Alert. Now, this system is not without its glitches, and that's something we'll get to a little bit later in the show.
Yes, we're going to check back with you. Thank you for that, Ali.
Got it.
We have updates now on two murders for you tonight. On Toronto's last two murders, actually. A young woman has died in hospital after she was shot multiple times in Etobicoke over the weekend. 24-year-old Veronica Morova is Toronto's 9th murder victim of the year. She was shot while sitting in a car in a parking garage near Lakeshore and Park Lawn early Sunday morning. Morova was rushed to hospital without vital signs and died today. Police say two people were last seen fleeing the area in a dark-colored SUV. And this man is the city's 8th homicide victim of 2019, 28-year-old Tesfa Welsh Hope. Police say he was shot and killed late Wednesday night on Bergamot Avenue near Islington and Rexdale. He was found outside a group of apartment buildings. Investigators say they're searching for at least two suspects and a green or tan late model SUV that was seen speeding away from the area.
Nearly 24 years ago, a crime spree began with a violent break-and-enter, which resulted in the death of an elderly Kingston woman. What followed would be two additional murders, a bank robbery, a suspicious fire, and even the use of an explosive device.
An alleged serial killer has been arrested in Kingston. Provincial police say one man is responsible for 3 murders reaching back to 1995, and as you heard, much more, including a bombing here in Toronto. Details on the cold cases coming up. The backlash against MPP Lisa MacLeod continues. Parents of children with autism gathering in front of her constituency office today to protest funding changes.
All kids deserve better. All kids deserve better.
They say the Ford government's plan will leave children with autism unable to get the therapy they need. This comes after allegations that MacLeod bullied the Association of Behavior Analysts to support the PC plan. She tweeted out an apology last night. The association acknowledged that apology, but some parents at the protest were still calling for her resignation. Many questions remain unanswered over why Jody Wilson-Raybould was shuffled out of her role as Justice Minister. The reasoning behind it has shifted multiple times, and today Prime Minister Justin Trudeau opened up a little more on the matter. Julie Van Duzen is following the story from our parliamentary bureau in Ottawa. So, Julie, what information did the PM add to this unfolding tale today?
Yeah, he added information. I'm not sure if he cleared anything up. He said that Jody Wilson-Raybould would still be the Justice Minister and Attorney General had Scott Bryson not stepped out of politics. If you recall, he announced that he was leaving in December. The cabinet shuffle happened in January, but he doesn't explain why it is that she was shuffled. I mean, think about it. Bill Morneau wasn't shuffled. Chrystia Freeland wasn't shuffled. So he certainly doesn't clarify the why. In fact, yesterday, one of his backbench MPs suggested she was moved because she doesn't speak French, and there are issues coming up in Quebec that need someone who can speak French. But he said that's false. He said basically there are a number of factors when it comes to a shuffle, but he didn't clarify the reason. So because of this void, the opposition has certainly jumped in, and they suggest the reason she was shuffled is because she didn't bow to pressure from PMO officials who were trying to get her to get a deal going with SNC-Lavalin where they would avoid criminal prosecution. So these are all questions that are swirling. The Prime Minister did acknowledge there was a lot of lobbying on behalf of SNC-Lavalin and the case that it was facing and the jobs at stake. And he did say that Jody Wilson-Raybould did seek clarification from him. Take a listen.
There are many discussions going on, which is why Jody Wilson-Raybould asked me if I was directing her or going to direct her to take a particular decision. And I, of course, said no, that it was her decision to make, and I expected her to make it.
Until she gives us her side of the story of what happened, we've got a Prime Minister just giving us spin.
No, Charlie Angus making a good point there. We need to hear from her. Now, the Prime Minister also spoke out today specifically about the whispers and smears against Wilson-Raybould. What did he have to say about that, Julie?
Right. Well, since she was shuffled, there's been kind of a campaign in the shadows by anonymous Liberals suggesting that she was difficult to work with, a thorn in the government's side. This particularly irked Indigenous leaders. She is Indigenous. Yesterday, for example, 8 Indigenous senators, most of them appointed by Justin Trudeau, praised her for her work as Attorney General, her work on reconciliation, and thanked her for her leadership. Well, the Prime Minister said today he certainly condemned all the remarks that have been made against her. The Conservatives say that he still hasn't praised her for her work. So take a listen.
The sexist comments, the racist comments that have been made by anonymous sources are unacceptable, and I condemn them in the strongest possible terms.
Certainly the Prime Minister should have enough class in order to say something positive about her, but he didn't.
So many questions still swirling around. The biggest, of course, why did she quit this week? And of course, we haven't heard from her. And questions that are cropping up from his own backbench. So, Dwight, this is not going away. There'll be more to come next week, I'm sure.
You're right. Far from over. Thank you, Julie.
You're welcome.
I mean, that's sleek and looks super fast.
It looks like it's something space age, like something from a sci-fi movie.
You can look and touch, but probably can't buy them. Still ahead, we take you to the auto show to look at the high-end cars of our dreams. Many of us took advantage of the warm-up last night, Colin, and tried to crack some of that ice. Got rid of most of it, but this weekend?
Yeah, so it was a good opportunity, right? Glad to hear you took advantage of that. Yeah, things are really changing over for us this weekend. We're not going to see temperatures like we saw this morning. We've also got these winds to contend with, so giving us a wind chill and also providing the special weather statement that we are seeing, and that's because these westerly winds, when they're gusting, we are getting some bursts of snow coming in, or even just blowing some of the snow out there around. So some areas like Niagara have been seeing some of that action, and into St. Catharines as well. These are not the current temperatures. I just want to show you what happened this morning. Yes, it was so mild. That's why Dwight had that opportunity and many others to break up some of that ice. 5 in St. Catharines at 8 a.m., 4 in the city. However, these are the current temperatures. So the temperature's been falling, especially through the afternoon hours. It's -3 at the moment, but this is how it actually feels because those winds have been so breezy. Feels like -11 -8 for St. Catharines, and a look at the radar shows you that burst of snowfall that went through. You can see why there is a special weather statement. The winds are actually going to ease through the overnight tonight, and because of that, we'll see those being dropped and those backing off. But for us, -7, we're looking at a few scattered flurries possible, sunshine tomorrow, and the high of -2. Some colder air is coming in, though, Dwight, for the rest of this holiday weekend and into next week. Probably, yes, refreezing things. We'll be seeing that overnight tonight. I'll talk about all of that when I come back.
Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
I have no clue what I'm looking at.
I think everybody knows what they're doing when they take public transit.
I think it's maybe just kind of funny.
It has the makings of a flashy sports car commercial, but this ad is actually, as you can see there, for a Go Bus. More on that coming up.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Sidewalk Labs is now expanding its vision for a smart neighborhood along Toronto's waterfront. What was once 12 acres is now proposed hundreds of acres that includes a light rail line. But to fulfill this vision, Sidewalk Labs is asking for payback. Kelda Ewan explains.
Sidewalk Labs is calling it the way of the future, the building of a neighborhood fueled by innovation and technology. It was supposed to be on a 12-acre piece of land in Quayside, but grander potential plans have since been revealed. Sidewalk Labs is now planning to redevelop 350 acres in the Portlands, transforming something like this into something more like this.
I was pretty concerned and confused because there, as been told to me, they have 12 acres.
Paula Fletcher is the city councillor for Ward 14. Her ward encompasses the Portlands.
It's not the vision that I understand they were tasked to develop.
But spokesperson for Sidewalk Labs, Keithan Arang, says it was always the plan to look beyond just Quayside.
We will develop Quayside itself and show that we could actually do this. Is this going to be successful? If so, we actually want to work with partners in Toronto and developing the rest of the eastern waterfront.
Sidewalk Labs' proposed redevelopment of the Portlands would include financing a light rail line, but here's the kicker.
They also want to be repaid. It's kind of coming to say, well, here, I'm going to come and do all these things for you, and I'm putting in this money, and then I'm going to get it back.
We're proposing to build infrastructure that's something that the city would usually do. So the LRT is usually something the city would build. What we're proposing is that we would finance it for the city to build and bring it so that we can do it now. We can accelerate it. But if we're going to finance it, then we want to recoup the cost somehow.
Sidewalk Labs is asking for a portion of property taxes and development fees that would normally be funneled toward the city.
It hasn't happened in Canada before, but the Portlands, the eastern waterfront, has not been developed for 100 years. There's nothing that's been going on down here. So we do need to try a new approach if we want to build new neighborhoods down here.
This afternoon, Mayor John Tory released a statement saying any final proposal from Sidewalk Labs will be given full public scrutiny, subject to public consultation and discussion. Sidewalk Labs says a draft proposal will be presented in the spring. Kelda Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
The latest real estate numbers bring good news for those looking to buy their first home, but current homeowners won't be happy. Housing prices across Canada took a tumble in January, with the average home price falling to $455,000. That's down a full 5.5% year over year. Fewer homes were being sold thanks to tighter mortgage regulations and stress tests. Prices fell the most in the prairies and BC's lower mainland. Parts of Ontario's Golden Horseshoe saw price gains, as did Ottawa, Montreal, and Moncton. Police in Kingston, Ontario say they've solved a string of cold cases involving murder, a bombing, and a bank robbery. A Kingston man and his former wife have been charged following an investigation that began last year. Amanda Pfeffer has more on the story.
Michael Wentworth walked into the courtroom in Kingston, not a tall man, about 5'6", a white mustache, his head bowed. Police announced today the details of their investigation. The first murder charge involves the death of a 92-year-old woman, Henrietta Knight. She died in hospital after being beaten unconscious in her apartment in 1995. He's also charged in the death of 30-year-old Richard Kimball, who disappeared a year later. And the death 5 years later of Stéphane Saint-Denis, who died in what police call a suspicious fire. Over the last year, police say they ramped up their investigation, with 12 investigators working new information. On Thursday, they moved in. About 120 officers with Kingston Police and OPP executed search warrants, including at this location, where they remain today, and they will not say what they're looking for.
The two properties that you're referring to, we are conducting search warrants there. We're still at those residences, and we will be there for a number of days, because they are there's a number of different outbuildings and different things that we have to do in order to do our proper search.
Wentworth's arrest went without incident, say police. OPP case manager Jim Gorey has been involved with the case for 24 years. He says officers had the chance to tell the victims' families about the arrest in person.
We take victims of these types of crimes very seriously. We went to the individuals personally and told them. It's probably one of the finest things that you can do, when you can give somebody that type of resolution, and it's quite something. Over these years, I've done it numerous times, and it's still a great feeling.
The Crown says more charges could come, and police say their investigation into Wentworth, who also goes by Verney, will continue.
Mr. Verney has been involved in the criminal element a great deal of his life. There's a good potential for him to be involved in other serious crimes of these matters, and that's why our investigation will be continuing.
His ex-wife, Sandra Carr, also faces charges including obstruction of justice. Both will be held in custody until February 22nd. Amanda Pfeffer, CBC News, Kingston.
After the break, we go back to our top story tonight, the murder of an 11-year-old Brampton girl allegedly by her father. An Amber Alert went out last night asking the public to keep an eye out for the pair. A tip helped catch the suspect, but not all calls to police were helpful. We'll explain.
It's disheartening for sure, and especially when they're calling 911 to report that, because it's not an emergency.
Have children of my own, and I could never imagine losing my life to somebody that she was supposed to trust.
Ria was, she was like the princess of the family, and I loved her.
It was supposed to be a day of celebration. Thursday was Ria Rajkumar's 11th birthday. She was picked up by her father to celebrate, but she never returned home. The girl's disappearance touching off a frantic search, a search that ended in tragedy with the discovery of her body inside her father's Brampton home. Rupesh Rajkumar, her father, was arrested and now faces a first-degree murder charge. Farah Morelli joins us once again live from Brampton. And Farah, just a shock to this community, this girl's little school on this Family Day long weekend.
That's right, Dwight. I've spent the day speaking to neighbors in this community, to parents, and we even spoke to members of the suspect's family. It has been a tough day. There's been an overwhelming sense of disbelief, shock, and a lot of confusion over what happened. This young girl, Riya Rajkumar, was just 11 years old. As you mentioned, yesterday was not just Valentine's Day, it was also her birthday. She was meeting up with her father to celebrate yesterday afternoon, dropped off by her mother, but she never came back. She was found dead in her father's home late yesterday, and as you've been hearing, he has now been charged with first-degree murder. Today it was regular classes at her school at Meadowvale Village Public School. Parents told me that they wanted to return to a sense of normalcy for the students. Many of them were coming to class not knowing that their friend and peer wasn't coming back, and so a lot of the things that teachers were doing were trying to help them have a normal day. I had a chance to speak to some parents today as they were dropping off lunches to get a sense of how the mood is like inside that school today.
Really upsetting, you know, that a child so young. Yeah, it's going to be a tough day for the little ones today. You're emotional. Yeah, I mean, you know, you can't help but give your own kid. You know, what these kids are thinking in there and what the questions are going to be like when we get home tonight.
Well, I got the Amber Alert last night. Yes. And when I see her picture, I know it was her. So, because I've seen her before in the school.
Very sad. Yeah, our hearts go out to the family.
Now, as you heard earlier as well, Dwight, grief counselors were at the school today. They were working with teachers on scripts and things that they could tell the students about what happened today. We know that it is Family Day long weekend, but I was told by the school that they're considering keeping those counselors there through the weekend. We know that they will certainly be back on Tuesday for what will also be a very difficult day for students, for parents, and for staff.
Yeah, her classmates will have a difficult time understanding this. Thank you, Farah. Now, the Amber Alert for Riya Rajkumar went out to phones around 11:30 last night. It was loud and apparently woke some people up, but it's hard to believe just how some of them reacted. Ali is live in Brampton with that part of the story. And Ali, there were the tweets, but some people actually called 911 to complain.
That's right, Dwight. People were actually groaning and complaining about how this Amber Alert was an inconvenience for them. They were calling 911 and holding up emergency lines.
So you heard this on your phone last night around 11:30. It was an Amber Alert notification. Peel police were looking for Riya Rajkumar, who had been abducted by her father several hours before. They had information about his car. If observed, it read, call 911. Calls came in, not necessarily for people with tips, but from people complaining about being woken up. Peel police tweeted at 3 a.m. after the search concluded, our communications bureau is receiving numerous calls to 911, complaining about the late hour of the Amber Alert.
It's disheartening for sure, and especially when they're calling 911 to report that, because that's not an emergency. I would just ask people to put themselves in the shoes of this victim's mother and how that would feel.
The Peel Police Paramedics Union had harsher words. The dispatchers can't help you, and they're too professional to tell you to go to hell. The alert system isn't perfect, as evidenced by people's phones buzzing this morning, or not at all.
So we contacted Palmerax. That is the system that issues these types of alerts to your cell phones. And they said they are aware that some people, many people, received this Amber Alert even after it was called down, and that people outside of Ontario were also receiving this alert. They said they are reviewing the rollout.
Yeah. The system's not perfect, but definitely needed. Thank you, Ali.
Exactly.
York Police releasing some shocking video tonight. It shows a car pulling up to the driveway of a Markham home late last month. Then a man gets out and begins firing towards the house. Another person in the car can also be seen shooting. The men then drive away. No one was hurt. Police are asking for help identifying the suspects in the car. The $6 million man may be gone, but the Ontario PCs and the Board of Hydro One are still clashing over compensation packages.
I'm not going to speculate at this very moment, but we're not going to take very long to take action if we're come to an understanding that this is not the position that they're going to take. This is not a negotiation process for us.
The board submitted a framework to the government last week proposing a maximum $27 million compensation package for the CEO, but the government wants that capped at $1.5 million, and they're asking for board members to get no more than $80,000. Hydro One was given until 5 p.m. yesterday to revise the proposal, but instead of a revision, they released it to the public. In a letter, the board chair says they've balanced cost with the need to attract and retain highly qualified leadership. Now, the energy minister is urging them back to the drawing board. The government passed legislation this summer giving it the authority to approve executive compensation at Hydro One. Donald Trump is delivering on a threat he's been making for weeks, and he's doing it to follow through on a campaign pledge to build a wall along the U.S.-Mexican border.
We're going to be signing today and registering national emergency. And it's a great thing to do because we have an invasion of drugs, invasion of gangs, invasion of people, and it's unacceptable.
Up to $8 billion will be available for construction. Nearly $1.4 billion comes from a funding bill to avert a second partial government shutdown. Another $600 million would come from drug forfeitures and other proceeds of crime, but most will be taken from the Pentagon, $2.5 billion from military anti-drug activities, and another $3.5 billion from defense construction. Late this afternoon, the U.S. House Judiciary Committee sent Trump a letter announcing it would investigate his declaration. Betrayal or just business? The trade that sent DeMar DeRozan out of Toronto was rife with resentment. Next week, he returns to the city for the first time as a San Antonio Spur. Coming up, DeRozan in his own words.
To me, yes, it's business, but people use that word business so lightly to where it's not even worth nothing anymore.
Were you one of those Raptors fans who was sad to see him go? I know I was. I know you probably were too.
I was about devastated.
I remember.
The 22nd, San Antonio's here, the 22nd. That's been in my calendar for ages.
Yes, we'll all be watching that game, just like we're watching the weather for this long Family Day weekend. What do you have for us?
I know, it's a pretty important one here, and I'll tell you a couple of things I was excited to do today, and that's when I was filling out the almanac and plugging the numbers in and having a look at those. For the average high, for a change, it's getting very close to being just -1. We're almost there, so it is getting a little bit warmer. And the average low, finally, I didn't have to put a -10 there. Okay, I know it rounds to -10 in terms of our average low for this time of year, but -9.8. That was encouraging to me. All right, our current temperatures out there, we have -3. That's what we're looking at for Markham, for Toronto, Mississauga. It's a little cooler at Kitchener at -5, and St. Catharines a little milder after you've had that burst of snow that's moved through. It feels like -8, however, and it feels like -11, so double digits, minus double digits everywhere else. And we've had a few bursts because of the winds that we've been seeing. Still some special weather statements in place, not for the GTA, but I was showing those earlier in the show. So the winds will be easing through the overnight tonight, and as they do, we're going to see this relaxing a little bit, and that's why you'll see it come off the model imagery here. But our outlook as we head into Saturday, it's a rosy one. It's a sunny one in terms of lots of sunshine around, especially earlier in the day. There's a few pockets that are going to pick up a little bit of extra cloud cover later into the afternoon, so becoming more of a mix of sun and cloud from around the Golden Horseshoe central to the southern areas. You can expect that, and back towards southwestern Ontario. And speaking of Sunday, that's when another system's going to be moving through very close to us, but staying to the south. As it does, it pushes some flurries into southwestern Ontario. We could see a little pocket here. We're definitely going to see more cloud cover coming through on Sunday, and we're going to keep some of that as we head towards Monday, but not looking too bad. Overnight tonight, though, Not as mild as it was last night. So temperatures falling, -7, -8, a few areas -6. Tomorrow, sunshine by the afternoon, picking it up to -2 to -3, and the wind's not as strong, but there will be a wind chill. So in the afternoon, it's actually going to feel like -8. Now into Sunday, there's that cloud cover. I put the risk of some flurries, -5 for the afternoon high. Even cooler into Monday with that mix of sun and cloud. Tuesday looks okay, but it's going to be a cold morning Tuesday morning because that low -18. And the next system that looks like it could give us some measurable snowfall, Dwight, that's coming for Wednesday of next week. So mid next week we're looking at.
Whoopee. Oh, my shovel's going to break before this all ends. Thank you, Colette.
You're going to go through a few, I think, this winter, Dwight.
Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
The Canadian International Auto Show is on right now in our city, and the Premier stopped by today.
I took a little run through there. It's like putting a kid in a candy store, seeing all these new cars, beautiful cars. The auto industry is so important to Ontario.
Doug Ford attended to push his $40 million auto plan for the province, unveiled yesterday. He calls it driving prosperity. It comes amidst GM's shutdown of its Oshawa plant and is aimed at creating new jobs for the 2,600 workers who will be out in the cold. Ford also visited the Detroit Auto Show earlier this year and met with executives from Ford, GM, Chrysler, Toyota, and Honda. Some of the most expensive cars in the world are on display this weekend. As Greg Ross found out, the world's top manufacturers love coming to Toronto because when it comes to luxury cars, this is one of the top-selling cities in the world.
The design of this car was inspired by an F-15 fighter jet.
Auto Show General Manager Jason Campbell says the Devil 16 made by Devil Motors out of Dubai isn't even being manufactured yet, but when it is, it won't be cheap.
It will sell for about $2.2 million and come with a V16 engine.
Just one of the many high-end cars on display this weekend as part of the Auto Show's Auto Exotica exhibit.
In general, people in Toronto love their sports cars.
And that's one of the reasons why McLaren sales executive Horst Buelau says his Toronto dealership is one of the most competitive in the world.
2017, we were fortunate enough to be Retailer of the Year, so that not only in worldwide sales, we're #1, parts, service.
And you have to be willing to pay top dollar to buy one of their cars. The Senna is the big one they have on display at the Auto Show this weekend.
The Senna is a limited run car, 500 units being produced worldwide. And this one here, the way you see it equipped, is about $1.4 million pre-tax.
Do you hope maybe one day you'll see one of these driving down the road?
I hope one day I'll be driving down the road.
Only around 20 will be shipped to Canada. Buelau says he expects to sell 11 in Toronto alone.
Yes, actually, Toronto has now, it's been basically pinned on the map.
Cam Movasagi is the brand manager for Grand Touring, which deals only in luxury cars, like this $680,000 Lamborghini. He says around 50% of his business comes from people who don't even live in the city.
Right now, yeah, I mean, Canada in general, it is a safe place. So Toronto, people feel at ease, so you don't have to always constantly look over your shoulder.
He says it's enough of an attraction for some of his customers to come and live here for at least part of the year.
When they're here, they also like to have a super luxury car. The only thing you got to avoid is the potholes.
As for the Devil 16, only 7 of these cars are being manufactured this year. This one was shipped to North America as part of a photo shoot with Drake. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, normally, that's what you'd expect from the auto show, luxury vehicles beyond the reach of our paycheck, or maybe some cool concept cars. But this year, the show actually features one you can ride on with your Presto card. Natalie Nanowski tells us about the new Metrolinx promotional campaign that's turning some heads.
A McLaren? Sure. A Lamborghini? A Lotus? Of course, those are to be expected. But this really isn't.
I think it's maybe just kind of funny.
And that's the point. This Metrolinx promotional campaign is a tongue-in-cheek take on the classic car commercial. The Go Bus ad has everything. Intense music, the roaring engine shots. It's the first time the green 60-seater will be at the Toronto Auto Show, juxtaposed with more notable reveals, like the new Formula One racer that had car enthusiasts cheering. Metrolinx says its goal is to get people thinking about public transit as the go-to option. After all, it says it's the original, quote, autonomous driving vehicle, where you can sit back, relax, and watch cat memes.
When I think of a Go Bus, I think of, you're just trying to get to school, trying to get to work, but it's kind of creating a luxury experience out of a Go Bus, right?
Yeah. So, trying to make it look sexy, like make commuting look sexy.
Yeah. Commuting's never cool, but that commercial is.
But not every commuter agrees with the 1-minute ad.
I have no clue what I'm looking at. I think everybody knows what they're doing when they take public transit. It's kind of over the top.
Definitely. It makes the coaches look like grand options during rush hour.
Metrolinx partnered with an ad agency in the city to pull the whole thing off. It cost them $175,000. Regardless what you think, it has a lot of people talking. And there will be a Go Bus stationed here at the Toronto Auto Show until February 24th, so you can come check it out in case you haven't seen one before. Natalie Nanowski, CBC News, Toronto.
She's taking her talents to Charlotte. This Ontario kid is heading to the NBA's All-Star Weekend. We talked to Aaliyah Edwards' coach about her path to success. She is one of only 2 girls chosen for a prestigious international basketball camp during NBA All-Star Weekend. Ontario's Aaliyah Edwards is currently in Charlotte for the festivities. We spoke to her coach about how she managed to land an honor bestowed on only a few kids from around the world.
She's here every morning early, stays late, tutors younger students. She really does a great job of setting the tone.
Aaliyah Edwards and Alberta's Yvonne Edgin will represent Canada on the girls' roster for the Basketball Without Borders camp. They'll get to work on their skills with a handful of big names, including the Raptors' Masai Ujiri. This year's camp has the top young prospects from about 30 countries in attendance. Congratulations. One person who won't be at the All-Star game this weekend, former Raptor DeMar DeRozan. It's his first time not being selected for the big game in 5 years. And this past year has been a rough one for DeRozan. He was traded away from Toronto for Kawhi Leonard, a move many, including DeRozan, saw as a betrayal. Now we're hearing from the man himself as part of a CBC Gem series called Inside an Athlete's Mind. Here's a preview.
You see people always question or throw hatred at a guy that makes a decision for him or his family. But when it's happened to him in the other way, oh, it's just business. To me, yes, it's business, but people use that word business so lightly to where it's not even worth nothing anymore. Because it's business don't mean the situation was handled right. I remember watching a mob movie. They go blow up somebody's car and their first words is, oh, it's just business. So I'm supposed to accept that you blew up my car because of business. It's bullshit to me, honestly. So no matter how much loyalty you stand by or how much morals you put in, you can't let that change you and your beliefs. And that's just how I look at it. So that's just life.
You can watch the whole 8-minute piece on the CBC Gem app or website. And just a reminder, Raptors fans, the Rosen returns to Toronto for the first time next Friday.
You are someone very special.
Hey, kid.
Not just a teenage girl.
Hey, what's your problem?
James Cameron is back on the big screen, mixing CGI and live action once again. There's a lot going on with Alita, Battle Angel. Eli has his preview next.
Your very human brain was miraculously intact.
It's the loneliest feeling not to know who you are.
In time, you'll remember.
There it is, the new dystopian sci-fi movie from James Cameron and Robert Rodriguez. In typical Cameron fashion, it boasts a pretty big cast and is packed full of special effects. Eli Glasner is here to tell us all about Alita, Battle Angel. Let's start at the beginning with this one, Eli.
Well, the beginning is in the future, about 500 years in the future. After a massive war, Earth was scarred. The survivors built this new city called Iron City, and that is where we find Alita. In fact, it's Dr. Dyson Ida who finds her in the scrap heap. So he brings this cyborg, he turns her back on, he reanimates her, and suddenly he kind of has a daughter. Now, as you can see, Alita, she has those giant, almost like anime eyes, and I think that's a way of reminding us that she's not quite human, except much like a human, she has a desire, she has dreams, she wants to know what she is, where she came from, and so that is the story. You have the citizens of Iron City who are just going about their lives, and then above them is this castle in the sky called Salem. Now, access to that is controlled by Vector, a crime lord played by Mahershala Ali, who runs the game of, and we saw a little bit there, Motorball, where cyborgs on wheels, Dwight, chase after each other and try and catch a metal sphere.
Okay, then.
We've heard this story before, right? Yeah, sure.
There's a lot going on here. So tell us about the visionaries, I guess, behind Alita.
So I've heard about, I think it was 10 years ago, Guillermo del Toro tells Cameron about this Japanese manga series, and this is everything that Cameron wants, right? An epic quest, a woman warrior, all of that. He's been trying to make this movie for over a decade. Finally, the technology caught up, but he's now busy making Avatar sequels, so he brings in Robert Rodriguez, who made Sin City and the Spy Kids franchise. And look, I will say, Alita looks remarkable. I mean, what they're doing with CGI, that is a real human actor, Rosa Salazar, underneath that computer animation, which is why it's so convincing. But the thing is, this is still a James Cameron script. He's one of the co-writers, and you know, you get these special effects guys, you get these guys that are sci-fi visionaries like your Lucas, like your Peter Jackson, and they forget about a little thing called the story. And with Cameron, as amazing as Iron City is, you know, there is no subtext. There's only text. Everyone says everything. Let's start with the father talking about his discovery.
You are someone very special.
Hey, kid.
Not just a teenage girl.
Hey, what's your problem?
You can't remember.
What do you mean?
Doc found you in the scrapyard. So you must be from up there.
And I'm just an insignificant girl.
Now, you might be an insignificant girl, but you don't actually have to say, I'm just an insignificant girl. And then I'm sorry to report there is a love interest, a 25th century street urchin named Hugo, who has all the personality of an Old Navy model. Let's take a look.
Does it bother you that I'm not completely human?
You are the most human person I have ever met.
Sorry, I think I just hurt myself from rolling my eyes.
You're so
but, you know, I know some people out there saying it's about the action, right? We came to see the metallic warriors collide. Even with that, before they get to the Royal Rumble, there's the speeches. And so here's a bad guy named, what is it, Grzinska. He's in the underworld. I wonder if he'll mention it. Let's take a look.
Welcome to the underworld. From here, there are worlds above worlds above worlds. It's where I used to live.
And it's where you're going to die.
There you go. So, here's the thing. If you're 10 years old, and this is like your first sci-fi film, it's gonna rock your world.
Okay.
But if you actually want ambiguity, nuance in your storytelling,
layers.
There are no layers here. It just is. It's all there. What you see is what you get. It's very pretty, and it gets 3 stars.
Thanks, Eli.
You're welcome.
You could have been harsher. If you're hoping to get out the door on Family Day, heads up, some malls in the GTA are open. The AGO, the ROM, and the Science Center are also open if you're thinking of a family outing. And the LCBO and beer stores will be closed, though government offices, banks, and some malls are closed. So do we need to be inside? Is it going to be that chilly out there this weekend?
No, it's looking good, and sunshine tomorrow, too. You know what else is open? Medieval Times.
Oh, is that what you're doing?
I know that because I'm headed there this
Excellent.
weekend. That's one thing that's also open. But, yeah, we're just seeing some colder air that's moving in. So overnight tonight, we're falling to a low of -7. Some scattered flurries possible, but really into tomorrow, it's looking nice with sunshine. A few areas, pockets will pick up a few more clouds into the afternoon hours. -2. Okay, colder than today, but the nicest day we're going to see of the next 3, although the others aren't bad either as we head through the holiday weekend.
Always good to have sunshine, even when it's a little chilly out there. Enjoy the Family Day long weekend, everybody. That's our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Mike Wise has your next local news tonight at 11. Have a great weekend. Colette and I will see you back here on Monday, Family Day, at 6.